Welcome back, and it's time for Opinion Court. Get in touch with us if you're online using the hashtag Opinion Court on 22422, which is our SMS line. And we're going to start with introductions. To my immediate right is Ayub Savula. He's the Lugari Member of Parliament, but also the Deputy ANC Party Leader. Next to him is Edward Kisiangani, who is our resident political analyst. And to my left is Peter Mathuki. He is the acting Wiper Secretary General. And next to him is Patrick Gavara, who is a writer, cartoonist, and curator for theelephant.info, is it?
Yep.
All right, and you're all welcome to the program. But let's start by listening to this.
Accordingly, the removal of Senator Moses Wetangula as Senate Minority Leader though valid, stands suspended and will not take effect unless and until a senator has been elected by the NASA coalition in the manner provided by Standing Order 21 has occurred.
That I'm going nowhere, that I'm here, that I will be here because I was not invited to join NASA. I am in NASA as a founder. If anybody wants a divorce, it will be noisy, it will be messy, it will be unhelpful, and it will have casualties.
And there you are. Savula, I can only... You're laughing. The man is laughing.
Yeah.
Our whole co-principal of NASA being ejected in such unceremonious fashion in a plot hatched by none other than his own brethren.
And I think it is done in bad faith. I think we need respect among the co-principals in NASA. But I'll outrightly say that there is no party in the Senate or National Assembly that enjoys what you call leadership immunity, that ODM alone can produce the leadership. I remember at the national level, the Speaker of National Assembly wrote to the Registrar of Political Parties asking her to explain whether NASA is legally recognized as a coalition, or he can accept individuals' appointment according to the strength of political parties in Parliament. The Registrar of Political Parties wrote back to the Speaker of the National Assembly indicating that NASA is a coalition. To that extent, the summit decides who should sit in the leadership of the National Assembly or the leadership of the Senate. In this case, at the Senate level, the summit had a meeting, and before the meeting, Wetangula and Honorable James Orengo had a war who should be the leader of minority in the Senate. The summit, consisting of Raila Amolo Odinga, Musalia Mudavadi, Wetangula himself, and Kalonzo Musyoka, agreed that let's honor our fellow, our co-principal, Wetangula, to chair, to be the leader of minority in the Senate. But what is happening? The MPs allied to Orengo went and sat in a hotel, crafted a strategy on how to remove Moses Wetangula. But this is in bad faith. And you're asking our leader in NASA, who is Raila Amolo Odinga, to convene an urgent parliamentary meeting so that we can discuss this matter and sort it out instead of a acrimonious way of handling things.
Fair enough. But Peter, I mean, yes. Wiper is present in the Senate, yes. Was quiet while Wetangula was there trying to say he's going nowhere, and frankly it's just a matter of a technicality that is pending. And you know, we are being treated again to this very ugly power struggle within NASA. Surely are you not letting down the millions who turned out to support a NASA candidature to begin with? And does this not prove that there was nothing to this marriage to begin with?
Thank you very much for first and foremost inviting us to talk about this. But let me tell you something. Wiper was not quiet about it. Wiper may possibly saw this as unnecessary drama that was not even worth possibly talking about it, because we know very well that indeed the position that the Senator Wetangula is occupying, being a co-principal, it was actually a decision that was reached by the principals themselves, and there's a procedure and a process that is always followed when, of course, you're having such a position. And therefore, when a political party, for example, would sit and write a letter and say, now we are changing from this to that, then it's neither here nor there. And therefore, it's not about Wiper keeping quiet, but It's about not even wanting to be associated with it in the first place, because to me it doesn't have any weight whatsoever.
But there you are with the speaker's ruling, and it's just suspended waiting, you know, this technicality.
And that is...
So it has weight.
Yeah, and that's the technicality is where the problem is. Because now, again, NASA, we are talking of the principal sitting down and do minutes. And those minutes then must be able to clearly say, we agree so and so to be the leader of the Senate. And therefore, the principals are not set on this. And I would wonder if, for example, it's ODM now pulling this, where would they now bring those other principals to come and do many to the effect?
But it is not, the point is that it's not a marriage of equals, that ODM is Baba, and Baba is pulling the rug from underneath your feet.
And that's what I say. We have a coalition that is registered with the political party's office. And it doesn't say who is, for your information, this is bigger, this is smaller. This is a coalition of equal political parties. And I tell you this, nowhere whatsoever. For example, if no DM would come and say we have more members than this, it is because the political party is sacrificed. They say the presidential candidate will be from ODM, and therefore they got more members. If, for example, the presidential candidate was from Wiper, for example, would be having even more members than ODM. If now the candidate was from Ford Kenya or NC, they'll be having more members. So it's them riding on all of us and becoming strong, and therefore now riding on us. And now they want to change the story and say now we are strong because of this.
I mean, but you just have to look at the last election and see what Moses Wetangula pulled in versus what in his own backyard versus what the president did to answer your question. I won't go there though, but Prof. Ngadhara, I want to open it up to you and say this. You know, the president's handshake with the NASA leader Raila Odinga, has it proved that there was nothing to NASA to begin with, to the extent that although we had seen the fractions right from after the election, now it is all out ugly war?
Well, I think that the shenanigans that went on, I think even before the handshake, if you think about the swearing in, you know, essentially showed that there was a split within NASA, and I think even Prof had said it on this very show. You know, and I think that the fact that the other three principals didn't turn up when the swearing in was to happen, you know, really undermined the unity of NASA, and even NASA being seen as one unified bloc. And then there was a surprise handshake where people apparently had switched off their phones but were still expecting calls, I think, from Nigeria and stuff. You know, I mean, it was obviously they were all caught by surprise. You know, and now you're hearing them. Kalonzo has been saying that he now wants his own meeting, you know, with Kenyatta. So I don't think NASA is in any way acting as a unified bloc, and I think it pretty much more exists on paper than it does in reality, at least as far as things go. And I just add one thing when it comes to removing people from office, you know, and I think we've got a history of this. If you think, and especially it happens whenever these deals are cut. Remember when NDP went into KANU, you know, and then suddenly you had a split between KANU A and KANU B, and a big acrimonious meeting at Kasarani, where people like Saitoti and Kamotho were kicked out of what became New KANU, or as officials of New KANU. You know, so there will always be casualties whenever these big deals, these guys come together. You know, and I think. So
you can only imagine what the divorce casualties we're alluding to.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, in this case, he looks like he's being set up to be one of them.
Right, to be one of the casualties. Exactly. Fair point. But I want to come to you, Prof, because more substantially behind NASA, and if you really followed what their messaging was in the run-up to the election, and really even before, is that this was the alternative to a crooked Jubilee system, that they were the authentic voice of change, of ills that, yes, the country does have. Does this then, are we now saying that they are not the authentic voice of change? And if they are not, who is?
We are the people. They have never effectively represented us. And I think, and I have even tweeted several times, Kashara, I think you can now remember, I said this NASA is going to collapse. I have even tweeted. And then received a lot of bashing from the NASA supporters. But I've been vindicated. NASA must collapse. If I were my brother Wetangula, I would probably have facilitated the moving out, because it is not going to benefit him. They have already embarrassed him. It's poor political strategy to say I'm not quitting. It is a good political strategy to say, I think the signs are that I'm not wanted, let me go. And he learns lessons from what has happened, and then he knows now how to do it. Remember that the establishment of NASA has been based on dominance, which is a good political strategy. That to get command, you must promote the illusion that command actually belongs to you. And if that illusion becomes true. In this case, since the formation of NASA, Raila Odinga has promoted the illusion that the command of NASA belongs to him. The other core principles, including Weta and Kalonzo, have played into that trap. One time on this show, we discussed that when Raila Odinga went and spent about a month in the United States, these guys did nothing. And then they organized his homecoming.
That's true.
And that is how they lost it. And we said,
Savula, that's how
yes, we went. So from the start, they have played, you know...
They played cheerleader.
Yes, and you know, the two leaders, members of parliament, have said that equal principles, you know, you are doing what you call moral politics, and it doesn't exist. It's only in the textbooks. There's nothing like moral politics. Morality doesn't exist in this. You can ask, this is unfair, this is fair, but that does not work. What works is how you identify your interests, and then they work. Raila Odinga knows what he wants. Kalonzo, Weta have always played second.
No, you're forgetting Muda.
Mudavadi, yes.
My boss.
Of course, with Mudavadi, you can see the desperation that this group now, including a former vice president, they want now to meet the president. I think time has come now when we can see people crying. The period of crying has started in Kenyan politics. Yeah. They will cry more. And those who are going to cry belong to Ford Kenya, they belong to ANC, they also belong to some sections of Jubilee. The guy who is the main star in this argument, in this plot, is Uhuru Kenyatta. Now everybody's craving for what?
For him.
For a meeting with him.
For his yeah. So the guy is smart. He has time and he has seen these guys are hopeless.
I know. Hold your thought. I know everyone wants a rebuttal, but I am pressed for time, sir, and I'm sure you'll be able to work this into your answer. But let me pose the question, Prof. Then, because you've talked about everybody craving Kenyatta's attention now, so you will have to let me finish my point. What does that mean then in terms of having an effective, powerful and strong opposition to check on government? Just today, the three other parties have said, yes, they endorse this particular handshake. However, they want, some technical things to be done in public light, etc. But by and large, sounds like we're playing ball. Yes. So who's going to hold the council?
The opposition, before the MPs come, the opposition now, what would happen is everybody has learned their lessons. To get an opposition that will now be meaningful, it requires Weta, Kalonzo and Mudavadi to re-engineer themselves. They don't have to follow Raila Odinga right now. They just need to re-engineer themselves and start posing as a real opposition. So it doesn't mean that the opposition is dead. It depends on whether they behave as opposition and re-engineer themselves or not. If they don't do that, there will be another opposition which will come. Maybe a splinter group from Jubilee, and the people like Savula will form a new opposition group.
I think on this one, it's only be fair, because Prof is being too, economic with the truth. He's talking academics, which we appreciate.
No,
he's not talking politics. When actually he advises, when actually he tells that Senator Weta should have kept quiet and say, yes, I'm ready to leave. This is politics. And there is a procedure. He's a member of parliament. He understands procedures of parliament. And therefore, there's no way he would simply be, conned by a party and simply say, I'm leaving it. He's there. He has a right to be in that position. Number two, NASA is not going anywhere, because NASA is a coalition of
Political
for political
parties.
parties.
Political parties,
And it is
yeah.
registered
It's
with
not an
political
individual.
parties. It's not an individual thing. And therefore now, so one party may want to play to be bigger and therefore determining existence of NASA. Far from it. Wiper, look at me. Do I look like we are crying? So when you are saying others are type of crying,
We will not cry.
Let me explain. As I finish, what did we say? The dialogue, sorry, actually was started by other principles. You remember when Kalonzo Musyoka came from Germany and said, Raila and Uhuru, you must now talk. And even other core principles said, yeah, it's important we dialogue. But then they said, no, don't dialogue. We want to go using a different way. And then all of a sudden they come and say, now we want to go and dialogue.
You were outfoxed.
What has happened with
You were outfoxed.
What has happened with
And now you're crying about it.
What Kalonzo has done has said, I don't want to go to talk to these people hiding. I want to make it public that indeed we have an intention to go and talk to Jubilee, but with an agenda. And what is this agenda? It is the NASA agenda. We've been talking of electoral reforms. We've been talking about the strengthening of judiciary. We've been talking of police reforms. We've been talking of devolution. And therefore, when you look at the paper that was signed, it did two things. One, of course, Raila was very easy. Prime Minister was very easy to say, yes, I now agree, Uhuru Kenyatta, you are the legitimate president of the Republic.
And this opposition Wiper has always had?
And Wiper kept on saying it's important with dialogue on issues affecting Kenyans. And so those are the issues going forward. And even we even said, those many NASA supporters, how will their issues be addressed? We are talking of issues of compensation. Many Kenyans lost their lives because of actually fighting for a cause, fighting for one Raila Odinga to become the president. And therefore we are saying, you cannot sign an agreement that is not carrying along the issues affecting Kenyans.
Okay.
And therefore the principals want to come and say, hey, Mr. President Uhuru, please, we want these issues affecting Kenyans to be part of this. So that becomes all-inclusive, it becomes nationalistic, it is anchored on national and public interest.
You've made your point, Sabula. Sabula, where's the opposition now? Is Ekulu Aukot our savior?
I think let's not discuss, let's not put a lot of politics into meeting between Raila and the President Uhuru Kenyatta. These were two principals, chief principals meeting. It was a people's president and a head of state and the commander-in-chief of a country meeting. Where is the problem?
The problem is
our partners in this coalition who are ODM are treating our principles, the core principles, Musalia Mudavadi, Wetangula, and Kalonzo Musyoka, as prefects. They're not being treated as equal principles because we gave Raila the opportunity to run as a presidential candidate. Musalia became the manager. Wetangula became a supporter. Kalonzo became that is how we are being treated. That's how we are being treated. But in the coalition agreement, they are equal at that level. And that's how we should discuss this thing on paper. And you see, the way we need to drive this thing, Kuru's deputy was not in that meeting. This is a meeting between a people's president and the president of the Republic of Kenya. And we have never had...
That's a bit deceptive because he does concede that.
And when ODM moved ahead in parliament, yesterday to declare themselves, we are Serikali. I decided as the deputy party leader of ANC to call upon Wiper, Ford Kenya and ANC MPs for a breakfast meeting to look into the matter of salvaging this coalition because it's a sinking ship and we don't want the ship to sink at this moment.
You have said it yourself.
Because Kenyans have invested hope in NASA.
Gentlemen.
The sinking ship is sinking because of mistrust.
You've made your point.
And ODM disrespect to other equal partners in that coalition arrangement.
The ship has already sunk.
We want to solve that. That's why I'm the official opposition leader now.
Wishful thinking.
Let me very quickly.
You think he's an official opposition leader? No.
Prof, you're out of order as much as Sabula is.
No, I think first, I mean, I'm glad that you're admitting it, that the ship is sinking.
That's a fact.
I think the ship really exists only in form, not really in substance. I think the idea that Raila and the rest of the principles occupied sort of the same level, even within NASA, was always an illusion. You know, there was clearly what was a fast amongst equals, if you will.
Right.
You know, and I think that again, if you look at our history, it really teaches us a lot. Our coalitions never really last. You know, where is PNU today? Would anybody believe a decade ago it was a governing, party? And it was also a party made up of other parties. Don't forget. And it went apart when we had KANU with LDP and the rest coming together. It went apart. NARC, same thing happened to them. So this is our the path that our parties go, and it's because history, our parties are not. Our parties are not real, genuine vehicles for people's grievances or to articulate people's needs. They are really simply vehicles to attain power.
But let me ask you, Gathara, do you think, now that Sabula is saying he's the official leader of the opposition, is there any threat that Parliament, as we envision it, will be watered down, that a majority that is already there by Jubilee adding the first of equals, if you like, the majority of ODM from the other side, that we're really looking at an all yes sir kind of parliament?
I think we've been there for a while. I think even before Jubilee and its tyranny of numbers came in and really reduced Parliament into
parliament.
Essentially a rubber stamp for the executive. You had before that the Grand Coalition, where most of the cabinet, most of the people in Parliament, were essentially members of the parties to this National Accord Agreement. And we saw what happened. Then Parliament cannot play its role of holding people to account. And I remind guys that if you remember what happened immediately after the National Accord was signed, at the very first meeting of the Grand Coalition Cabinet, they essentially set up what came to be known as the maize scandal. It was 2 billion and a third of the country starving. That ended up with that. That is the cost of not having an effective opposition. And that is where we are headed. That if these guys, there's nobody who can stand and hold them to account, then they very, very quickly get into the business of eating, which at the end of it is what they're there to do.
Let me ask you this question then. Do you think it is severe enough to say that we are looking at the makings of, for all intents and purposes, a single party rule? Because if the loudest opposition is now has gone to Parliament and said it's Sisili Serikali as well.
Yes, it can translate into that, but we are not yet there, because I think new leadership is going to emerge, and in my opinion, even in Parliament itself, this is where the new leadership will emerge.
Under me,
when now the agenda that was a statement of intent by the president and honorable,
which we really need to interrogate,
which we need to interrogate, devolution and all those things. When they set up the machinery to start discussing those issues, I think several members of Parliament will either accept or reject. And when the group that will reject, depending on how it is done, that is where new leadership is going to be born. To emerge.
I think we've got to ask yourself, to remember that there was an attempt, even during the days of the Grand Coalition, the GNU, to set up an opposition that was outside. Remember people like Babu Namwamba trying this, and they were very quickly brought to heel. So the thing is, yes, you can have the attempt, and you might have the intent, but this will always be done at the margins, because the people who actually wield the power, who can actually hold the government to account, most of them will already have been co-opted, and the numbers will be on the side of the government, which is what is dangerous.
Like the way the ODM is moving,
just 30 seconds, by 30 seconds rejoined by you, Peter. 30.
Yes, and that is why maybe most of the members of Parliament, they would become maybe one-termer, because Kenyans are watching. Kenyans are watching. And they would want members who would carry their interest along.
And aspirations.
They don't want aspirations. They don't want people, of course, serving themselves. And that's why we are saying, NASA, I don't see it sinking. NASA will remain strong. It has 3 members who are coalitions. We still carry along the agenda of Kenyans, because what matters here is not how strong our party is. It's the strength of those Kenyan interests that we are going to carry along.
That's what you're not carrying.
And that is what I'm saying.
NASA is going to be a shell.
And that's what I'm saying. We are carrying those. electoral
We are salvaging.
justices. And because we have just left an election, going forward, we don't want a country that again gets into these kind of things. And we are saying we want electoral justice, we want stronger devolution, we want reforms at the judiciary, and so forth.
Okay.
And that is what we stand for.
Fair enough.
And therefore, ODM wanted actually to look for an excuse where they would not want to support.
They wanted an excuse to exit.
And that is what we are
That
saying.
is
We
it.
are strong.
Exit strategy.
And we are going to remain very strong.
I don't want to go
Let
down
me
that
clarify
route.
something.
I want you to respond to this, though. Take a look.
Just 1 minute.
I want you to respond to this. Take a look at a cartoon by Patrick Gavara. You can find it on www.theelephant.info. But basically, this is what it says. On the one hand, you have a surgeon, Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, playing surgeon and saying, we will now remove the graft clot in the patient's brain. Then another one says, wait, shouldn't you be operating on the political class and not ordinary Kenyans? And then Raila responds, yes, but that would be us. Oh my goodness. And basically, Gadara, in this you're basically saying that it's the wrong patient on the table.
Yes.
By virtue of this agreement.
Yeah, if you look at the joint statement that they put out, they were quite clear about what they thought were the problems. First, they talked about diversity, and then secondly, they talked about Kenyans' propensity for violence and corruption. And that actually made me think, is it Kenyans who are corrupt? And actually, Kenyans are more the victims of corruption, by a few people who actually control what is a predatory colonial state, And then what they're trying to do is to socialize the blame, is to say, oh no, it's all of us who are the problem, not these few guys who are stealing. Just one last statistic to think about. 8,300 individuals in Kenya control about 2/3 of our economy. 8,300 out of 50 million. That is no way saying Kenyans are corrupt. It is those guys who are corrupt. They are stealing from everybody else. And I think for as much as we are trying to propose, or Raila and Uhuru are trying to propose, that actually the problem is Kenyans. I think they're essentially operating on the wrong patient.
All right, Savila, you have a minute.
Oh, not even a minute. I'll answer this thing in a second.
Yes.
Politics in Kenya is about the poor and the rich. Raila and Uhuru are sons of bourgeois. They're operating on a poor man. What is the answer? They're exercising the authority.
And Musalia Mudavadi
over
is significantly different.
We're talking about the cartoon.
Okay.
Talking about the
cartoon.
They're exercising the authority over the poor.
So
what happens? Ng'ombe zikipigana?
That's the thing. What they should be fixing is that system that's actually taking from
They cannot fix
else.
because they are son of bourgeois.
Well,
they cannot fix a problem.
That's the thing.
A problem belonging to a poor man.
You do actually bring a very good point, because then how can we trust politicians and an agreement between politicians or your political outfits that are made up of these people you're calling bourgeois to sit down and debate on issues of Kenyans?
And that is why,
that's why we need to elect a president.
And that is why other principals have realized there's a problem. That's why Kalonzo, along with others, have said we have issues that are affecting Kenyans. And that's why we want to go and remind His Excellency President Uhuru, maybe there's some things when they were signing they forgot, affecting Kenyans. And those are the things that will be carrying along. And that is why we are saying this thing must be people-centered, it must be people-centric, it must be a legal framework. So that today, suppose tomorrow Uhuru and Raila disagree for whatever reasons, where are we going to anchor this kind of serious dialogue? That's why I think there must be a framework. That must be in place.
Okay, Prof, you have the final word.
Yes, I think, Patrick, you almost got it right, but you missed one fundamental thing. This thing about this agreement between Uhuru and Raila is about 2022. In my own estimation, Uhuru Kenyatta has agreed with Raila not to undermine his succession program for 2022. And then Raila has accepted to take the pressure while the prince for 2022 is being prepared, who is William Ruto. And I think people like Weta and Kalonzo, if they insist in remaining there, they will be told, come and join us, but make sure you secure the presidency of William Ruto under the Uhuru succession. That is where the thing is. Forget about devolution. Forget about all these things that you are hearing about about reforming the state. It is a lie.
They're not going to do it.
And that's our time.
And that's why
I want to thank you for your views, gentlemen. It's been good fun. Wow.
Kenya is okay.
Good night. God bless. Bye-bye. Samula, thank you.